All eyes turn to New Zealand light heavyweight Carlos Ulberg as he takes on Tafon Chakwe at UFC Fight Night. As mentioned, New Zealand light heavyweight Carlos Ulberg will be in action in North Carolina, Charlotte this weekend at UFC Fight Night. Featuring this weekend at UFC Fight Night, the return of Carlos Ulberg.
He is on shaky legs. Now he's down. And now he's out. That's it. Jag.
Obviously, we've worked most of our life to get to this point where we are. The UFC has been a dream for many years.
By TKO, Carlos Jag Ulberg.
He's got a lot of skill. He can be a real problem at 205. Baby.
Oh, he hit him. Oh, we got him. He got him. The backstep left hook. That is his best shot. He's knocked everybody out with it, and he did it again. He did it again.
Carlos, you have now won 4 fights in a row.
By submission, due to a rear naked choke, Carlos Jag
I feel like I need the challenge.
At some point, I'm going to be facing these guys who are at the top.
Ladies and gentlemen, referee Nick Behrens has called a stop to this contest at 12 seconds of the very first round.
When I do face them, it's going to be fireworks.
Talofa lava and welcome to UFC on Sky. I am Rav and Dan, and joining me, co-host, New Zealand lightweight from the UFC, Dan Hooker. Kia ora e hoa and welcome.
Let's get it going.
Look, great news to come over the past week. Carlos Ulberg, our very own light heavyweight, getting a crack at the number 4 Jamal Hill at UFC 303. That's incredible news.
Yeah, like that's best case scenario for him pretty much. And that's a guy coming off the title fight. And if we go by history, you beat the man that just challenged for the title, that means that you get a title shot yourself. So, you know, that puts Carlos Ulberg one fight away from a title fight against Alex Pereira. So I think we're all excited about it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because Israel didn't even know, and then Israel, I told him he's fighting Hill. I said he's fighting Hill, and then he goes, and then Alex, and he's, man, Izzy just got goosebumps, man. He was so excited for Carlos, so excited just thinking about that fight as well, because like in our opinion, not only do we think Carlos beats Hill, we think he beats Alex as well. We think that's one heck of a fight, but we feel like Carlos has the edge over Alex as well. And the amount of camps we've done preparing for Alex, we got a pretty solid game plan for that there at City Kickboxing. Yeah,
that is very, very exciting times. And I was going to ask you, what was it like in the background for the club? Because yes, it's a big, achievement for Carlos to get this fight, but for the club as well, it'd be absolutely fizzing. Yeah,
well, it's just like just an accumulation of hard work, I guess, that you put that many fights in a row, you put that many impressive finishes, especially like a 12-second knockout against a ranked opponent, like in his last fight. You jumped the queue. That like I was saying that before, I was like, now you have something like that momentum is something that the guys above you want. And for someone as high as Hill to then look at Carlos Ulberg as a massive opportunity, not only getting that the ability to get him for a title fight, but you're a co-main event of a Conor McGregor card, which means like a lot of people that don't usually watch the sport. There's a lot of eyes that aren't usually on the UFC that'll be on the UFC that weekend, and they'll be on the Carlos Ulberg fight because everyone will get in one more fight before that. So this is an opportunity to really make himself a star. This is his opportunity. He's been grinding kind of behind the scenes for years now, for a decade now. Now it's his time. This is his time to shine, and it's only 4 weeks away.
That's right. And I mean, before the Alonzo Menifield fight, we were talking about he was on this trot of 6 fights, how well he'd been doing, and that the only trajectory for him was to get to that title shot. You were talking about Anthony Smith as a next potential opponent. So to get someone like Jamal Hill is absolutely, way up at the scale. But we were also talking about how fighters have been getting these opportunities lately. The UFC's been giving, opportunities like this to Steve Usyk, to Jack Della, who came up against Gilbert Burns. And now Carlos is getting that same opportunity.
Yeah, the UFC is famous for not really liking people that beat around the bush. So, like, a lot is to be said for guys picking and choosing fights. But the UFC will if you're hungry, you're finishing fights, and you're consistently saying yes to fights, you will jump the queue. And we can see, like, Steve Erceg, number 10, fights for the title. Carlos Ulberg now one fight away after only one ranked fight. These things happen to guys that jump on opportunities.
And when you think about it now, UFC 303 is on June 30th, which means, you know, that's just over a month away. And I mean, Carlos has just come off a fight and a camp, but you know about somewhat of quick turnarounds when it comes from fight to fight. So what happens with Carlos's prep now?
Oh, it's pretty steady. Like, it's just because he's already fit. He's still fit from his last camp.
Yeah.
There's no time to get unfit. It's just more, just game planning for the opponent now. Now, like, because that fitness base is there, he's already ready to go. I saw him in the gym this past week, and he's fit as ever. And so it now just becomes down to stylistic adjustments that he'll use for Hill in that matchup. It comes down to just ironing out the small stuff, really.
Yeah. It is one thing to be on a UFC card. It is another to be on a Conor McGregor UFC card, as you well know. So will you be, like, maybe perhaps helping Carlos, well, not helping him, but giving him tips on, it can get quite chaotic.
Oh, I wish I was at the most boring Conor McGregor press conference of all time. The first time he fought Poirier, I was quite upset about that. But there's just so much more attention leading into it. Like, I definitely noticed that with, like, the media involved in it, the amount of people that want to talk to you, the amount of media attention around the event, like, it definitely is a whole nother thing. But that's also the benefit of being from City Kickboxing. You've been around big cards before. He's been around Israel's UFC, his entire UFC career. Carlos has seen it from the start to where he is now. He's seen he's been around, he's been out the back, he's been there for media day, for one of the biggest stars in the sport. So he's seen all of this stuff firsthand, and he's processed it. The guy does a lot of mental preparation, and I feel like he's definitely visualized this, and he'll be able to, smooth sailing.
Nice one. And when you think about Carlos Ulberg versus Jamal Hill, what does that matchup look like, and how does Carlos get the job done?
Oh, now I'm getting excited. Now I'm getting excited. Like, you don't want to strike with a guy. Like, you can see it in his hands. He's just got something special, like the athleticism, the timing, and the speed at which Carlos Ulberg fights. He's going to be a real problem for a lot of these guys, especially guys like Jamal Hill, who is going to opt to stand with him, especially for guys like Alex Pereira, who is going to stand for him. Neither of these guys are going to really press the wrestling that hard against Carlos. These are guys that are going to stand on their feet and pick shots. And it's just like that, I feel like, is Carlos Ulberg's world.
Absolutely. Exciting times. And that is, of course, UFC 303. But yes, before we get too far ahead of ourselves, it's UFC 302 this weekend. Dustin, the Diamond Poirier, is getting his title shot against Islam Makhachev, and we are very lucky to be joined by Dustin right now. Kia ora, Dustin, and welcome back to UFC on Sky.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me.
Well, Dustin, yet again, another fight week for you. But, how is this one a little bit different? I imagine there's a lot more media attention ahead of what could potentially be the biggest fight of your career so far.
Yeah, it definitely does. A lot more interviews, a lot more sit-down interviews, Zoom calls. But it's just part of the process. I've been here before. This is my third time fighting for the undisputed world title in the UFC, so I've kind of expected this.
Now, you've always said, Dustin, that titles don't change the way in which you prepare for fights, but this one's surely a little different with so much on the line. You alluding to the fact that this could be your last fight. So are there any different emotions going into fight week this time around? Yeah,
that's the big part of it. This time in my career, I'm 35 years old. I know I won't be around to get another shot and climb my way back up to the top, So it's all or nothing here Saturday night. I'm going about it and treating it as a regular fight, not putting the extra pressure on myself. I just want to be content with my career. I know I've done the work in training camp, and I'm prepared and ready to go out there and fight. And I feel good, but I don't want to put the extra pressure on myself. I'd love to end the story the right way.
Hey, bro, so you got the fight against Islam this time around, and he's on quite a streak at the moment. Does that change any way that you prepare?
It's a bit of both. I still focus on my strengths and also try to tighten up holes in my game, but definitely focusing on the takedown defense and the grappling transitions and scrambles that we might get into, and trying to get back to my feet. You know, that's really what we focus on this camp. But I'm always working the things that I do well.
So if this is your last dance, mate, what kind of performance are you looking to go out there and put on this weekend?
I'd love to get my hand raised any way possible and become the undisputed world champion, but I'd honestly like to stop Islam. I'd like to get up if he gets me down. I'd like to make him work the whole fight and stay in his face, stay busy, and I'd like to knock him out.
Dustin, you mentioned after that Justin Gaethje fight that you kind of slipped into a dark place. I was actually quite interested in knowing how you were able to perhaps not come to the end of it, but, you know, get to the other side and not only reestablish yourself as a fighter, but to now be fighting for a title.
Work on myself. Try to write my thoughts, and when bad thoughts come in or anything like that, to switch them. You know, a lot of things. I started talking to a therapist and just going over a lot of things. You know, my wife helped me out a lot through this. Close friends back home helped me out a lot through this. And it's still it's not like it's fixed. It's a process that I have to work on every single day, but it works if you pay attention to it and be mindful of your thoughts and things like that. You know, it's worked for me, but it's not a fixed thing. It's something I have to practice every single day.
So yeah, obviously we've all been through some dark times in this sport. It ain't cricket. Like, what did that teach you though about being an athlete?
It just put things into perspective a little bit more. Kind of told me something I already knew, that this is just something I do. This isn't everything. You know, I'm so much more than a fighter, than a UFC contender. That's just something I do. Every day I go home and I'm a father and a husband and a business owner and so many other things. That's who I am. This is just something I do.
Yeah, I saw that you mentioned you were bringing a daughter out for this fight. So that kind of signaled to me that you've never done that before, that might be a sign that this might be our last one. So what does that mean to you to have your daughter there?
I just, I mean, it means everything to me. You know, my whole career has got me to this point to try to reach the mountaintop one more time. And at 35, you know I don't have a lot of years left. So we'll just see how I feel. But it could be, you know, like I've been saying, it could be my last fight.
So what would your parting advice be for UFC fighters, knowing that you've been in the UFC for 13 years? So what were your secrets to longevity in the UFC?
Dedication, you know, being disciplined to the sport, trying to remain a student and still loving what I do, not feeling like it's work when I go to the gym, feeling grateful that I get to go to the gym and I can't believe I get to call this a job. Doing something I love to do since I was 17 years old, you know, started doing this. And the way it started, a lot of, you know, back then I wasn't getting paid. I was spending money to train and spending money to go to fights and stuff like that. So to turn it into a career and provide the life I have for my family through doing something I was passionate about, something that's very hard to do and be successful at, I'm proud and grateful to have that kind of career. No, I didn't see it going this way, but I didn't think I couldn't make it to this point. You know, I was just trying to be the best I could. And over the years, it kind of just, my career had formed. I kept beating guys and putting on fun fights and it turned into what it is. But I was just honestly not looking that far down the road when I was a younger fighter. I was just trying to win the next fight, and it turned into this.
And when you look back over the years, Dustin, what would be the moment that stands out to you the most?
Yeah, there's two that come to mind. Beating Max Holloway and breaking his 12 or 13 fight win streak to get the interim title. And also knocking Conor out in Abu Dhabi was a special night for me because I had to wait so long to get that fight back.
Well, hopefully this time you'll be breaking another 13-fight win streak, this time of Islam Makhachev's at UFC 302. Thank you so much for joining us and all the best for the weekend ahead.
No problem. Thanks for having me on.
So that's Dustin Poirier's account of what's going to go down this weekend. What are your thoughts on him saying he's going to knock out?
He's going for the finish.
Yeah.
Like he's got full self-belief. I think he can, but in all honesty, that's probably the only way that I feel like he gets it done. I feel like if it's a long, dragged out, 25-minute fight, that more sides towards the big, strong, grappling heavy approach. They know Dustin game well. They've prepared for him before, that team. So they'll be looking to drag him to them. They'll be looking to press him against the cage, wear him out, and drag him to the floor, and then just start chucking submissions at him, which is what he has to deal with. So the guillotine, I don't think it's going to get him across the line. But if he can keep it on the feet, keep off the cage, look for the knockout. I feel like that's the only way that he gets this thing done.
What do you make of Islam Makhachev as a fighter? He's on a 13-fight win streak. He hasn't lost a fight since 2015. He's on an absolute tear. And if you think of Islam Makhachev as this, the Dagestani wrestler, he's been proving his credentials in the striking as well of late. Yeah,
well, they do like that. That's like the two sides of the same coin, you know what I mean? Like, that's why his striking has been so effective, is because he doesn't get hit much, he controls distance quite well, and people are just scared to death of going on the ground. So of course your striking is going to be more effective. Like, that doesn't mean that he's like by any means like the best technical kickboxer in the world, but if a guy is so scared, so worried about the takedown, like he's going to make mistakes when it comes to the striking, whereas like Islam doesn't really have to think about it. He's just I would say like Khabib was just far more aggressive, like more dominant, more like ruthless. Like when he got guys to the deck and he started letting his hands go, like he would really be aggressive, and he would like more guys on the feet, like he would rush in, and it was like kind of like fighting like a rabid dog. Islam's not the same. Like when he's on the striking, he keeps his distance, he just doesn't get hit much because he just stays out of range. Like he's just very, very cautious. And then the same when his grappling, he's not known so much for like big ground and pound, big heavy shots and just mauling guys. Like he just keeps, like he's just very composed and very patient. Like he just gives no space, and he just ticks all the right boxes and does everything. So yeah, I would say they're both incredibly well skilled, but just one of them is like far more disciplined and technical, and then Khabib you've got is just like far more aggressive. So they're just two different styles of fighting, but both equally as dangerous.
Two southpaws going at it as well, which is, you don't see that every day. How much does that play into your game plan?
Yeah, southpaw versus southpaw is like a funny one because usually it's an open stance fight, but yeah, this closes it down a bit. Well, Dustin just knocked out a southpaw, so I'd say he'd be feeling pretty confident about this one.
Also, Dan, the co-main event is the middleweights, Sean Strickland and Paulo Costa. Your thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, I'd say it'll be mostly a striking affair as well. I don't see it's going to be like a very grapple-heavy thing. But yeah, big, strong Costa pressing forward. I don't feel like he gets past the jab of Strickland. I feel like Strickland, he's very defensively sound, takes a lot more risk these days, but he'll just get heavy on his jab. He's obviously, Strickland's coming off. I thought it was a very good performance against Dricus. I actually had Strickland edging Dricus in that fight. But it was like when Dricus started just covering distance, blitzing, changing stance, and really putting the attack on, I don't feel like Costa has that kind of skill to blitz. Like those unorthodox blitzes that Dricus put onto Strickland to cover that kind of ground, Paulo Costa doesn't have. He's a very conventional striker. So I just don't feel like he has the skills to put that kind of pressure that we saw. Then we saw Strickland backing up, giving ground. I just don't feel like Costa has that skill set to push Strickland back. I feel like Strickland just picks him apart with his jab over a long period of time. That's how I see the fight going.
Yeah. Well, also too, it's a co-main event, but it's a 5-rounder. So how much does that come into play?
Yeah, well, usually we see like Costa being a bit more reserved. He's not known for the best gas tank in the division. He's like he's a very muscle-bound guy, and we all know that muscle needs oxygen to keep going. So a guy can, we saw him against Rob, but that was a 3-rounder against Rob, and he had like much higher of a pace in that fight. But yeah, he's quite famously known for getting quite tired and and gassing out. So I'm pretty sure that he didn't pick this fight for 5 rounds. I feel like if anyone wanted this fight for 5 rounds, it'll be Strickland, because he's so energy efficient. He's a true 5-round fighter, Strickland. So I feel like that edges towards his favor as well.
Absolutely. And look, another thing that's being introduced at UFC 302 are these new gloves. Strickland and Islam have both come out saying that they're crap and that they're not liking these gloves.
Nice.
Dustin Poirier has come out saying that he doesn't really feel a difference. But how much would that come into play if you feel so uncomfortable in your gloves?
Oh, I've fought in some pigs. Like when you're coming up in the game, like you've been to shows and just whatever they give you when you get to the event. I've had some you can't even close your, and some you can't even close your hands. So you get used to it, and it's like this big deal leading into the fight. And then as soon as you touch gloves with the other guy and start letting your punches go, I can tell you right now, the last thing on your mind is the coverings you've got on your hands. You got bigger fish to fry at that stage. I feel like you'll see a lot of comments on them coming into the week once we see everyone trying them on in fight week and stuff like that. But once it gets to fight, I can't see too much of a difference. I think from what we've seen, the new change, the biggest thing is supposed to be they're supposed to stop the eye poke. We're going to see far less eye pokes coming into it. So we'll see if we get into this card and there's an eye poke every single fight, then the gloves have definitely backfired. So for me, that's what I'm watching. Our guys getting poked in the eyes this weekend.
Also featuring at UFC 302 in New Jersey this weekend is Australian welterweight Jake Matthews, who will be up against Philip Rowe, and Jake joins us now. Kia ora, Jake, and welcome back to UFC on Sky.
Thank you very much for having me. Good to see you.
So you're coming up on 10 years in the UFC, so you must be well versed in preparing for big cards like this.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 10 years. So 10 years, and I don't even know how many fights I've had, to be honest. I think it's 21 or maybe 22, I think. So, but it's a good problem to have. It means I've been here for a long time. I've done something right.
Well, you and Dan actually debuted on the same card, didn't you? The Te Huna Makwad fight right here in Auckland, New Zealand.
Yep. Yeah, and me and Dan were actually supposed to fight each other on a headline. It was just a local show in Melbourne in a basketball stadium. A basketball court, wasn't even a stadium. But me and Dan were going to fight each other. I think maybe 2 weeks before that fight was going to take place, we both got signed to the UFC, and separate with different weight classes. But yeah, so we were this close to fighting each other.
Dan, do you remember this fight supposed to be happening 2 weeks before your debut?
Yeah, I did. I do. Yeah, we were supposed to fight in Melbourne. I remember he couldn't come down to lightweight, and then he gets signed at lightweight. I thought that was quite. I think because he was fighting at welterweight at the time, I was fighting at lightweight, and then I think I was going to have to come up to like 76, 75 kilo because he couldn't come down to lightweight.
Yeah.
And he got signed, and then he could magically come down to lightweight, which I was quite surprised at.
So when did your UFC contract come into play then?
I think we got him at the same time. I think because we were supposed to fight, a couple of weeks after the UFC Auckland card. Because, it's always like good to nail something down like around the same time frame, just so you're like locked in and training for something else as well. But yeah, we just both got UFC contracts at the same time. He got one at lightweight, and then I got one at featherweight. And
then now we're both got in the UFC, and we're both still here. So we're both done well.
So after 10 years, like from my own perspective, I'm feeling coming into the best shape that I've been in, really finding my feet. How are you feeling at this stage of your career, 10 years in?
Yeah, exactly the same. When they say that these are your peak years, late 20s, early 30s, I think I can definitely feel a difference, especially the last 6 months, mentally and physically. So hopefully that's the tipping point for me, because obviously I get to those fights where I'm almost going to bounce into the rankings and I'll drop the ball. And hopefully what was missing was that maturity. So if that makes a difference, then that'll be good. But yeah, the body feels good. I still love the sport as much as I ever have. And we'll see if it's true where they say your peak years are early 30s. I'm 30 this year, so I joke, I say it to everyone, I'm over the hill. But I think 30, you're just getting started. In UFC years, me and Dan, we're like old dogs, but I'm one of the pioneers of Australian MMA, like one of the first 7 Aussie fighters to get in the UFC, which is crazy. But at the same time, 30 is still quite young.
Well, thank you so much, Jake, and all the best at UFC 302.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.